so many of us, bad weather is bad for business. Whether it's because our people can't get to work or we have to shut up completely, it's not great, and it's something we really need to be planning for. It's really important that employers understand their legal obligations, as well as working out how you can keep your business running and open if you can in bad weather situations. So in this video, I'm going to run through the legal requirements on employers and some of the impacts on your individual employees and how this might help you motivate them for the rest of the year. So let's dive right in. Quick introduction to me, my name is Jenefer, I'm the founder of Silk Helix, and we are a HR consultancy. We specialise in neurodiversity and supporting small businesses with all things HR and employment law. So let's dive into your duties, your responsibilities, and how you manage bad weather in the workplace. First question is always, do we have to pay people who can't get to work? And the simple answer is no. So if somebody's got a contract for employment and a requirement to get to work and they can't fulfill that, then there is no duty upon you to pay them. There may be legal entitlements to time off. So for example, if the reason they can't get to work is because a school is closed, so they've got no childcare, then that would fall under the right to time off for dependents. But again, there is still no pay for that. So it doesn't actually matter in that respect whether it's because of childcare or physically not being able to get to work yourself. You do not have to pay employees. However, the situation is very different if you have to close the business. So if your individual cannot get to work, you do not have to pay them. If you tell them not to come to work or don't provide them with any work, then you do have a duty to pay them, unless you have a layoff clause in your contract of employment, which means that you can do short-term layoffs where you've got to close the business for an unexpected reason, and bad weather would be that reason and would always be the reason we'd be recommending putting layoff clauses into your contracts, so that it gives you that power as an employer if you need to protect the business by laying off staff because you can't afford to provide them with work, then having that clause really important. Now, there's some other legal obligations and things around layoffs, so I would recommend taking advice if that's what you're going to do. But it is really important that you've got that foundations of having the right contract to employment in place in the first place. Now, different businesses will have different scenarios here. Some of us physically have to be at work to do our jobs. We have to be in that building to service clients or perform the duties because of equipment, or that's where the role is. And in those situations, it's going to simply be a case of, can you get to work or not? Can we open the business or not? And that's where the previous advice is going to come in. In others, there's going to be a lot more flexibility. And obviously we know now we've got flexibility to work from home and enable people to make do, to enable things to carry on. And sometimes that might even be part of the business. So perhaps your physical building can't be open, but somebody needs to still be answering the phones, and that could be done remotely. So these are sorts of things where somebody might work from home. So instead of you having to pay them to be at home doing nothing, they may work from home during that time. And depending on their circumstances, they may or may not be able to do that. So if children can't get to school, for example, very young children might stop us working, whilst older children might entertain themselves and allow us to work at the same time. So that's going to depend on individual circumstances. But remote work and working from home is really beneficial to business. And this is a really good reason not to cut off working from home as an option within your business. Because if you do cut it off, if you do say we're never going to work from home, and then you get bad weather that stops people getting to work, you're going to have unproductive days that you wouldn't have done if people were able and set up to work from home. And often bad weather's predicted. Yes, we know weather forecasts have their problems, but really bad weather is generally predicted. So we can know to take our laptop home, take any equipment home to enable us to work from home for the next day or two during periods of bad weather. One question I'm often asked is, can we force people to take holiday or take it as unpaid leave? As I've said, we have to pay people. If we're requiring them not to come to work, then we have to pay people. If we want to force people to take holiday, we can do so if we give them double the length of notice to the period of holiday we require them to take. So if, for example, we know that there's a storm predicted to last 2 days, we're going to have to shut the business, and we've got 4 days notice of that, then we could give that 4 days notice and require people to take holiday. It is an option and it should be in your contracts of employment and your holiday policy to say that you may do that. And overall, it's a good idea to have a policy around adverse weather, explaining exactly what you're going to do and also covering things like train strikes. The same rules apply in those situations as well, where people can't get to work or you may be forced to close the business. One thing I do want to add to this is because you can doesn't always mean you should. And this is what I meant at the beginning of the video, where I said that how you impact in these situations can impact the motivation of people throughout the rest of the year. So if somebody loses income because they can't get to work, or they try to get to work because they can't afford to lose income and actually end up in an accident or something happening, say they've tried to drive in snow, for example, that's not going to leave a good taste in the mouth for people, and it's going to have an impact on how they feel about their work, how they're motivated, how they feel about how you treat them as an individual that's dealing with these situations. So what I would say is plan for these things. Think about what your response is going to be, because if your employees know, they can plan for it as well. So if they understand rationale and why your response is what it is, that's going to make on the day a whole lot easier for everybody to deal with. But it's about people being treated as they expect to be treated, and where possible, treating people in a way that means that when hardship hits, they feel like they're supported, because those sorts of things do motivate people. They do impact people's decision on whether they're going to stay with an employer, how you treat them in those difficult times. So it is something to bear in mind that the law saying you can do something and whether you should do something, the impact of that on people are two different things, and worth considering both of them. Also alongside, of course, your business need, because if you've got to close the business, you're losing income. So recognise that there's a lot of balancing going on for employers. And often when you're open and discuss these things with individual employees, they can understand and see that as well. The key thing is to plan and prepare. So make sure that you've got a policy that says, this is what we're going to do in adverse weather. And it can be really hard. I've got clients that will come to us kind of in the spring, the summer, and they're talking to us about their policies and handbooks, and I talk to them about adverse weather policies, and they're not really thinking about it. They're not thinking about snow or storms and things at that time. And when it hits, all of a sudden they're like, oh, perhaps we should have thought about it. And this is the thing, thinking about these things and how you want to deal with it in advance, being clear with people, having it in a handbook that's available to them so people know is really important, and ensures consistency of your response as well. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of unpaid layoff, then you're going to need a clause in your contracts that enables you to do that. Otherwise, you're going to have to get the consent of individuals, and who's going to want to consent to unpaid time off work when legally they'd be entitled to that being paid? So planning in advance, and this is where having advice from a HR consultant specialist is really important, because it means you are asked these questions. It means you've got somebody who's thinking about these things for you and planning for when things could go wrong within the business. So I hope you found that useful. If you want to find out a little bit more about contracts, handbooks, and how they can benefit your business, check out my video on that here. In the meantime, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. There's a new video coming out every week and you don't want to miss a single one.